The fog rolled thick across Seattle's streets as Nora Bennett hurried through the darkness, clutching a violin case like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Behind her stood the house where she had withered for 7 years under Judith's poisonous control. Ahead lay nothing but questions and fear, yet somehow that felt safer than staying one more night in that suffocating prison. Her violin case bumped against her hip with each frantic step, and the small backpack on her shoulders contained everything she had managed to save from Judith's surveillance. $300 in tips from her secret weekend job at the coffee shop, 2 changes of clothes, her mother's wedding ring hidden in a sock, and photographs of happier times before cancer stole her father and Judith stole her life. The weight of 7 years. Nora could still hear Judith's voice from that afternoon, sharp as broken glass. Your father wasted his money on you. A violin? What a joke. You have no talent, no future, and after I sell this house next month, you'll have nowhere to go either. Maybe that will finally teach you gratitude. The words had cut deep because they echoed Nora's own fears. Since her father's death 18 months ago, Judith had systematically destroyed every shred of confidence Nora possessed. First came the accidental disposal of her sheet music collection. Then Judith canceled Nora's enrollment at the community college music program, claiming they could not afford it while simultaneously booking a Mediterranean cruise for herself. The isolation had been worst of all. Judith monitored Nora's phone, intercepted her mail, and poisoned her relationships with cutting remarks whenever friends tried to visit. Slowly, Nora's world had shrunk to the walls of her bedroom and the kitchen where Judith demanded elaborate meals while criticizing every dish. A moment of clarity, everything changed when Nora found the real estate listing. Judith had not been bluffing about selling the house, the only home Nora had ever known, the place where her mother's presence still lingered in the garden she had planted and the window seat, where she had read bedtime stories. The listing described a motivated seller eager for a quick close, with no mention of the stepdaughter who legally had no claim to the property her own father had bought. Attached to the listing was an email from Judith to her sister. Once I unload the house and that burden, I'll finally be free. The girl has nothing without me. She'll probably end up in some shelter, but that's not my problem anymore. Reading those words, something inside Nora had cracked open. Not broken, but open like a door she had not known existed. She realized that staying meant accepting Judith's version of reality, that she was worthless and helpless. Leaving meant risking everything, but at least she would be risking it for herself. On her own terms, into the fog lost in memories of her mother teaching her to play violin, of her father's proud smile at her first recital, Nora did not see the traffic light turn red. She stepped off the curb into the intersection, her mind somewhere between past and future, missing the dangerous present entirely. The car's horn blared too late. Nora turned her head and saw sleek silver metal sliding toward her through the fog. She tried to leap backward, but her foot tangled with her violin case. The impact was gentle, barely a tap, but shock sent her sprawling onto the wet pavement. Her backpack burst open, scattering her pathetic collection of belongings across the street. "Oh God, are you hurt?" A man rushed from the driver's seat, his voice urgent with concern. "Don't move. I'm calling for help." "No." Nora scrambled to gather her things, panic flooding through her. An ambulance meant questions, records, possibly social services. Judith would find her. "Please, I'm fine. Really fine." "It was my fault entirely." An unlikely stranger, the man knelt beside her despite the wet pavement and his expensive charcoal coat. He helped collect her scattered possessions with careful hands, his movements gentle and deliberate. When he picked up her violin case, his expression shifted from concern to something softer, almost wistful. "You're a musician," he said, and it was not quite a question. "I try to be." Nora clutched her backpack to her chest, avoiding his eyes. Up close, she could see he was perhaps in his mid-30s. With kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and dark hair dampened by the fog, he looked like someone who solved problems for a living, someone used to having answers. "I'm Daniel Hartwell," he said, still crouched beside her on the wet street. "And I can't let you walk away shaking like this without knowing you're safe. Please, let me at least drive you somewhere. A friend's house? Family? I don't have anywhere, Nora whispered, then bit her lip, horrified at her own honesty. I mean, I'll find somewhere. A shelter or something. Thank you for your concern, but you've done enough. The offer she tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion from hours of walking, and the weight of 7 years finally crashing down on her shoulders. Daniel caught her elbow, steadying her with surprising strength. You're not fine, he said gently, but firmly. And I'm not going to let you wander Seattle in the fog looking for a shelter that might be full. I have a guest room. You can get warm, rest, and tomorrow we'll figure out your options. I promise you'll be safe. Every instinct screamed at Nora to refuse. Accepting help from a strange man was dangerous, stupid, the kind of thing that ended badly in every cautionary tale. But something in Daniel's eyes held genuine kindness, not the predatory gleam she had learned to fear. And the alternative was the foggy streets and Judith's inevitable discovery. Nora Bennett, she said softly, and I really don't have anywhere else to go. Daniel's expression gentled further. Then let's get you out of this fog. First impressions, his loft apartment overlooked Elliott Bay, with floor-to-ceiling windows that would have revealed the water if not for the thick fog pressing against the glass. The space was minimalist, but warm, with exposed brick walls. Architectural drawings pinned to boards, and bookshelves stuffed with volumes on design and engineering. Everything suggested someone who built things, who created order from chaos. The guest room is down that hall, Daniel said, shrugging off his damp coat. There are towels in the bathroom, and I'll find you something dry to wear. We can talk more once you're comfortable. Why are you helping me? Nora asked, still standing by the door, dripping water on his hardwood floors. You don't know anything about me? I could be anyone. Daniel turned to face her fully, and for a moment Nora saw past his competent exterior to something wounded beneath. Because someone helped me once when I thought I had nothing left? Because kindness shouldn't require explanation. And because he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because leaving you out there would haunt me for the rest of my life. Something in his voice told Nora he knew exactly what it felt like to be lost and alone. As she followed him down the hall toward the guest room, violin case clutched tight, she felt the first fragile stirring of something she had not experienced in years. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, beautiful hope. Nora woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distant sound of a violin concerto playing softly. For a confused moment, she could not remember where she was or how she had gotten there. Then the previous night came flooding back, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing with equal parts anxiety and disbelief. Daniel's apartment. The accident. His inexplicable kindness. It all felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment to find herself back in Judith's house. Still trapped, she found Daniel in the kitchen, dressed in casual jeans and a navy sweater, working on architectural sketches, while classical music played from speakers built into the walls. He looked up when she entered, and his warm smile eased some of her nervousness. Good morning. I hope the music didn't wake you. He gestured to the coffee maker. Help yourself. Also took the liberty of having my neighbor Patricia pick up some clothes for you. She's about your size and has impeccable taste. They're in the guest room closet. An unexpected proposal. Nora stared at him, overwhelmed. You bought me clothes? Patricia bought them. And you can pay her back when you're able, Daniel corrected gently. He set down his pencil and gave her his full attention. Nora, I have a proposition for you. My project coordinator quit 3 weeks ago to move to Boston, and I'm drowning in disorganization. I need someone detail-oriented, reliable, and willing to learn. The position pays $50,000 a year with health insurance, and you could stay here until you find your own place. You would be earning your keep, not accepting charity. I don't have any experience with architecture or project management, Nora protested, though her heart was already leaping at the possibility. A job. A real job with actual pay and benefits. But you have a degree in music theory, which I noticed from the acceptance letter that fell out of your backpack last night. Daniel's expression was kind, but serious. Music theory requires organizational skills, attention to detail, and the ability to manage complex systems. Those are exactly the skills I need. Everything else I can teach you. Learning to trust over the following weeks, Nora discovered that Daniel was both demanding and patient in equal measure. He expected excellence, but provided the tools to achieve it. She managed his project schedules, coordinated with contractors, organized client presentations, and slowly began to understand the elegant world of sustainable architecture he had built. Hartwell. Design specialized in eco-friendly buildings that harmonized with their environments. Daniel approached each project like a symphony, balancing form and function, beauty and practicality. Watching him work reminded Nora of her mother preparing for performances. That same intense focus and creative passion. She also learned that Daniel was far more than his professional success. He volunteered teaching architecture basics at a community center in underserved neighborhoods. He funded scholarships for students pursuing creative fields. And every Saturday morning, he visited a nursing home where his late mother had spent her final months, playing chess with residents who had no family visitors. The piano in the corner. One evening after work, Nora noticed the violin sitting unused in Daniel's office corner. It was a beautiful instrument, clearly expensive and well-maintained. But it had the dusty appearance of something long neglected. "My mother's," Daniel said quietly, seeing her looking at it. "She was first chair in the Seattle Symphony before she got sick. She taught me to appreciate music, to understand that beauty and structure could coexist. After she died 5 years ago, I couldn't bring myself to sell it, but I also can't bear to hear it played." "I'm sorry," Nora said softly. "Losing someone who taught you to love something makes that thing hurt to experience afterward." Daniel looked at her with surprise and understanding. "Exactly. People say time heals, but sometimes it just makes the absence more permanent." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Daniel spoke again. "Would you play something for me? Not my mother's violin, yours?" "I think I'm ready to hear music again, especially from someone who plays with such obvious love." Breaking the silence that night, Nora played for the first time since leaving Judith's house. She chose Vivaldi, something bright and hopeful, and watched Daniel's expression transform as the music filled his loft. His eyes closed and his shoulders, which always carried tension, gradually relaxed. When the final note faded, he opened his eyes and Nora saw they were bright with emotion. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That was beautiful. You have real talent, Nora. Genuine, remarkable talent." "My mother taught me," Nora said, her voice catching. She was a music teacher before she got sick. She used to say that music was the language souls spoke when words weren't enough. She was wise. Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. "My mother said something similar, that architecture was frozen music. I think they would have been friends." Something shifted between them in that moment. The boundaries of employer and employee, of rescuer and rescued, began to blur into something deeper and more complicated. Nora found herself noticing things about Daniel she had tried to ignore. The strength in his hands when he sketched, the intelligence in his eyes when he explained design concepts, the rare, genuine laugh that transformed his usually serious face. And Daniel, though he tried to maintain professional distance, could not help being drawn to Nora's resilience, her passion for music, her determination to rebuild her life from nothing. She made him remember what it felt like to care about someone without calculation or fear. An unexpected friend, Patricia, Daniel's neighbor, became an unexpected ally. The elderly woman had been watching Daniel retreat into loneliness for years and saw something different in him since Nora's arrival. She invited them both for tea one Sunday afternoon, her cozy apartment filled with photographs of a long and well-lived life. "You're good for him," Patricia said to Nora while Daniel was in the kitchen. "He's been alone too long, building walls instead of bridges." "But you're helping him remember how to be human again." "I'm just working for him," Nora protested, though her cheeks warmed. "He's been incredibly kind, but it's a professional relationship." Patricia's knowing smile suggested she saw right through that assertion. "Dear girl, I've lived 83 years, and I know what I see. You both carry the same wounds, different causes, but the same shape. Sometimes the broken pieces fit together better than pristine ones ever could. Shadows from the past 3 weeks into her new life, Nora was organizing files in Daniel's home office when her phone rang with an unknown number. Her hand froze over the screen. Only one person would be trying to find her. Nora. Judith's voice dripped false sweetness like poison honey. I've been so worried about you, darling. Running away like that without a word. How cruel. I filed a missing persons report, of course. The police will want to know you're safe. Nora's blood ran cold. I'm an adult. I have the right to leave. But you're not well, are you? Judith's tone shifted to something darker. You've always been so unstable, so emotional. I've documentation. From your doctor about your depression and anxiety, it wouldn't be hard to convince authorities you need supervision, unless you come home, of course. We can forget this unpleasantness ever happened. The call ended, but Judith's threats lingered like smoke. Nora stood frozen, fear and anger warring inside her. Just when she had begun to believe she might build something new, Judith reached out to drag her back into darkness. Daniel found her there minutes later, pale and shaking. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around her, and Nora let herself lean into his strength, let herself trust that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to face the shadows alone. Whatever it is, Daniel said quietly, we'll handle it together. You're not alone anymore, Nora. Not unless you choose to be. And for the first time in 7 years, Nora believed him. The charity gala was Daniel's idea. A fundraiser for arts education programs that would showcase local musicians while raising money for instruments and lessons. When he asked Nora to perform, she initially refused, terrified of being so visible, so exposed. But Daniel's faith in her talent proved stronger than her fear. You have a gift, Nora, he had said. And gifts aren't meant to be hidden. Let the world hear what I hear every time you play. Now standing backstage at the Four Seasons ballroom in a deep blue gown Patricia had helped her choose, Nora felt her hands trembling. Through the curtain, she could see Seattle's elite mingling, champagne glasses glittering under chandeliers. Somewhere in that crowd was Robert Chen, Daniel's business partner, who had been asking pointed questions about Nora's sudden appearance in Daniel's life. Daniel appeared beside her, elegant in his tuxedo, his presence immediately calming. You don't have to do this if you're not ready. I am ready, Nora said, surprised to realize it was true. I'm done hiding. A performance to remember. When Nora walked onto the stage, violin in hand, the crowd quieted. She thought of her mother, of all the dreams Judith had tried to crush, of Daniel's faith in her, and she began to play. She chose meditation from ties, a piece her mother had loved. Letting the violin sing with all the sorrow and joy and hope she had carried through 7 years of darkness, the notes soared through the ballroom, each one a declaration. I am still here. I still matter. You didn't break me. When the final note faded, the silence lasted 3 heartbeats before applause thundered through the room. Nora opened her eyes to see people on their feet, some wiping tears, and Daniel in the front row with an expression that made her heart skip. Pride, wonder, and something that looked dangerously like love. Confrontation. She found Daniel on the balcony afterward, looking out at Seattle's glittering skyline. He turned when she approached, and the smile on his face was unlike any she had seen before. You were extraordinary, he said simply. Nora, that was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever witnessed. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Nora's courage wavered but held. Judith, my stepmother, she's threatening to cause problems. She claims I'm unstable, that I need supervision. She has doctor's records from when I was depressed after my father died, and she's twisting them to make me seem incapable of living independently. Daniel's expression darkened. She's trying to control you again, and I'm terrified she'll succeed, that I'll lose everything I've built here with you. Nora's voice broke. These past weeks have been the first time I've felt like myself in years. The first time I've felt safe. I can't go back to that darkness, Daniel. I won't. A declaration. Daniel stepped closer, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You won't have to. Nora, I have resources, lawyers, connections. We can fight her. But more than that, ... He paused, seeming to gather courage. More than that, I need you to know that you've become essential to me. Not as an employee, not as some project to fix, but as someone I deeply care about. Someone I think I'm falling in love with. Nora's breath caught. Daniel, you can't. I'm a mess. My life is complicated and Judith will make things difficult and ... I don't care. Daniel's voice was fierce. I've spent 5 years building walls, protecting myself from feeling anything real. Then you stumbled into my life, quite literally, and suddenly those walls didn't make sense anymore. You remind me why connection matters, why beauty and vulnerability and trust are worth the risk. The choice before Nora could respond, Robert Chen appeared in the balcony doorway, his expression troubled. Daniel, we need to talk. There's a woman here claiming to be Nora's mother. She's making quite a scene, saying Nora is unwell and needs to come home. Nora's blood turned to ice. Judith had found her. Of course she had. This moment had been inevitable. Take me to her, Daniel said coldly, his hand finding Nora's and holding tight. And call security to escort her out if she causes any further disruption? In the ballroom. Judith stood surrounded by curious guests, her face arranged in an expression of maternal concern that made Nora's stomach turn. She looked exactly as Nora remembered, elegant and poisonous, her eyes calculating behind false tears. Oh, Nora, darling? Judith rushed forward, reaching for her. Thank God. You've had us so worried. Come home, sweetheart. We can get you the help you need. Standing strong, Nora stepped back, her hand tight in Daniel's. I am home, Judith. And I don't need your kind of help anymore. Don't be ridiculous. Judith's mask slipped, revealing the cruelty beneath. You have nothing without me. No money, no education, no future. Look at you clinging to some rich man you barely know. How pathetic. She has a job, Daniel said, his voice cutting through Judith's poison like steel. She has talent, intelligence, and more strength than you could ever comprehend. And she has people who actually care about her well-being, not controlling her. Judith's eyes narrowed as she looked between them. How noble. And how long will this fairy tale last? Until she becomes inconvenient? Until her problems are too much trouble? Forever if she'll have me, Daniel said simply, then turned to Nora. I know this is fast. I know you have healing to do and dreams to rebuild. But I want to be part of that journey, Nora. Not as your rescuer, but as your partner. I love you, and I will stand beside you against anyone who tries to diminish you ever again. The breaking point, Nora looked at Judith, really looked at her, and suddenly saw her clearly for the first time. Not as the powerful figure who had controlled her life, but as a bitter, small person whose cruelty came from her own emptiness. Judith had no power that Nora didn't give her. You're right about one thing, Nora said quietly. I did have nothing when I left, but I've learned something these past weeks. Nothing is sometimes the best place to start. It means you have room to build something real, something that belongs to you. I feel sorry for you, Judith. You'll never understand what that means. She turned to Daniel, letting Judith see the truth in her eyes. I love you too. And yes, I'll have you. For however long this lasts. For whatever comes next. Daniel's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. He pulled Nora close and kissed her, gentle and sure. A promise made in front of everyone who mattered. When they pulled apart, Judith was gone, escorted out by security. Robert Chen approached with an approving nod. Well, that was quite a declaration. For what it's worth, she's good for you, Daniel. I haven't seen you this alive in years. You beginning 6 months later, Nora performed her first full concert at Benaroya Hall, a sold-out show benefiting music education programs. In the front row sat Daniel, Patricia, and a dozen other people who had become her chosen family. Her violin sang with joy and sorrow and triumph, telling the story of a girl who had fled into fog and found herself instead. After the performance, as applause washed over her, Nora's eyes found Daniel's. He was standing, his face showing the same fierce pride and love she felt reflected back at her later. In the quiet of their shared loft overlooking Elliott Bay, Daniel pulled Nora close. Happy? He asked softly. Terrified and happy, Nora admitted, which I think might be the same thing. Good, Daniel said. That means you're living fully, and I plan to keep you terrified and happy for a very long time. Nora laughed, the sound free and genuine, then kissed him as Seattle sparkled beyond their windows. She had fled into uncertainty and found everything she never knew she needed. Judith had been wrong about one crucial thing. Nora had not needed rescue. She had needed the courage to save herself, and someone willing to stand beside her while she did. The rest was just music.